Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and distinguished guests, and welcome to this information session on the ILO's Global Commission on the Future of Work. Before we start today's program, I just want to extend a very warm welcome to the president of our conference, Mr. Samir Murad from the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan and Minister of Labor, who is here today, and we're very honored that you've taken the time to join us. So thank you.
Thank you.
Our Global Commission has met 3 times, first in October 2017, then in February of this year, and most recently in May. It has one more meeting left before it will deliver its report. The report itself will be launched in January 2019. The Commission has been aware all along of the very deep interest in its work from the very beginning. And so the office organized a very informative session at our governing body meeting in March. And given the significant interest from that session, we thought we would do somewhat of a reprieve during the International Labor Conference. So we're privileged today to have with us 2 of what we call our non-ex officio members of the Global Commission. To my right, Mr. Didar Singh, and to his right, Phil Jennings. A 3rd commissioner had also intended to come and was at the airport, but his flight was canceled. And that's Mr. Torben Albrecht. I will just let you know that Mr. Jennings will leave slightly early. It's not that he's getting up for any other reason other than he has another commitment. So what we'll do today is we will hear from our independent commission members, and then we will have remarks by our ex officio members, Mr. Luc Kordebeck, Mr. Mtunzi Madwaba, and Ambassador Claudio de la Puente. We'll then go into questions and comments, and we will then be able to have some replies from our commissioners. The DG will then wrap up the session. So let's begin. I want to hand the floor over to Mr. Didar Singh for his remarks. Mr. Singh, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. As a very, very quick introduction, I'm from India. I was a former bureaucrat, spent 36 years in government, and then for 5 years was the Secretary General of something we call the Federation of Indian Chambers of Commerce and Industry, our employers' body, which is a very, very large organization with 0.25 million companies that form or are members of it. So it's a large organization, and we've been associated with ILO since 1929. It's an old relationship. In terms of this particular Global Commission, not only am I really honored to be on it, as are 26 other members that are of it, it's also something which has done some tremendous work over this last year, and we've had a series of not only meetings and discussions, but a lot of knowledge papers which have been shared to come to some kind of a conclusion on where this whole thing is going. It is in many ways an extremely important agenda for the ILO, and as I was just mentioning to the Director General, this is the time that ILO must seize employment as the main issue for the future of humanity, let us say. In a sense, it's an important part of the development debate, and we all need to be part of it. Future of work, ladies and gentlemen, is not an app. Future of work is not something you can download onto your smartphone and then you've solved it all. It doesn't work like that. In fact, it is a very, very major issue for every country in the world today. And as the famous Jack Ma said last year, he said, some jobs will go, others will grow. So there is going to be a change, and we know that's all part of it. And like climate change, since we know that it is coming in the future, we need to prepare for it. And I think what the Global Commission has been attempting to do under the tremendous work that ILO has done is actually prepare for governments, enterprises, and workers to actually be ready to face the future that they don't know what will be, but at least be prepared for what may come about. We know there are some major global trends which are there. These global trends include, of course, artificial intelligence, machine learning, the whole thing which is threatening work. There is the whole demography debate. There is climate change, and then there is the retreat of globalization. If you look at all these global trends, we have to put the report in the context of these trends and then make our recommendations based on that. And to me, the way I see it as a commissioner on this commission, I see that development has to be the key cornerstone of every single discussion here. And development has to be the cornerstone of what the report will talk about. And in that, when we look at development, we obviously have to look at governance, because without governance, you cannot have development, at least in the way the social contract has been working for the last 500 years. Therefore, for these, I have 4 important issues that I believe should be there in the report. Number 1, the whole issue of the social security net. How do we provide for people in the future? Of course, along with an active labor market, they both come together. The second most important find, I would say, is that as the market expands and as the opportunities expand, we will need skilling and reskilling and lifelong learning. So that is the key of how we will manage governance in the future. The third aspect is mobility. We will see the mobility of labor, we will see the mobility of enterprises, we will see the mobility of all human beings in the value chain as it moves from place to place in different parts of the world. And finally, I will raise an issue which I mentioned last time, which maybe many organizations cannot really talk about, but we as commissioners can, which is regulation of AI. At some stage, the world has to look at regulating machines, regulating artificial intelligence. Are we prepared to actually address that? And with that, I will make the 5th and last issue, which I believe is really important for us to look at, which is, while we look at the world and while we look at the future of work, the importance of the informal sector will grow even more. And in fact, many parts of the formal sector will become more and more informal as we go along. That is what it's all about in terms of shared work, in terms of a shared economy, in terms of the gig economy. All of it leads to possibly informalization of all the activities that happen and work as it happens. So in the recommendations that the report will make, we do hope that all stakeholders will be taken into account, and I'm sure that they will be. Besides government, industry, academia, and individuals, all of them have to look at the future of work and see what all they can do within it. And therefore, I'll end by only saying that I believe this is something that the report will put forward, and I feel that this is something that all of us should really move towards, which is the concept of being positive, the concept of being abundance. Technology can bring us abundance. We must never forget this. So despite all the problems that we face, and machines and artificial intelligence and all the rest of it, at the end of the day, we are humans, and we know that we will find solutions to make sure that technology works for us and not we work for the humans. And with that final note on abundance, I will conclude my little talk on this. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Didar. Let me now give the floor to Philip Jennings.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, and good afternoon, everybody, again. I'm glad to have this opportunity to speak. I'm the General Secretary of Global Union, one of the small family of global unions. But I have to say, my understanding of my role in the Commission is I'm there in a personal capacity. Cough. Now then, first of all, what can I say? This Commission has been conducted in a very lively and so I would say sometimes very freewheeling spirit. There's been no attempt to cut the conversations that we have or the contributions that we have been making. The Swedish Prime Minister, the architect of the global deal, and now we have a new co-chair, and I'm sure a guy will go into this, in the President of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa, We have a Swedish Prime Minister, the godfather of the global deal, and I noted that the President of South Africa has indeed launched his own version of a new deal for the people of South Africa. What is very important is the context of the conversation that is taking place. The world has agreed those sustainable development goals. The world has agreed or tried to find a path to deal with climate change. The G20 and the Labour ministers, when they met last year under the presidency of Angela Merkel, said that in this revolution we should leave no one behind. And that is, I think, a very important principle upon which... J'ai perdu le français. C'est pas la première fois dans ma vie. Stop the clock. Il faut arrêter la montre. Je dois tous répéter. Where do I?
Come back. It's come back.
So I will now.
No, don't go back.
I've been strongly advised that even the French people in the room have an understanding of the message that I'm bringing, even if it wasn't translated into French. Yes, thank you very much. So, the world has agreed this roadmap on the Sustainable Development Goals. We have the roadmap of the COP21. We had the G20 ministers, the G20 summit last year. Message was very clear on the future of work. Leave no one behind. And also what this Commission has understood, that we live in an age of all the disruptions, whether it's political, economic, social, but also the digital revolution that we see. And in that spirit of leaving no one behind, I see this report about the future of social justice for humanity. I also think the historical context is important. This will launch the centenary year of the ILO. Let's wind back to that period that brought the ILO into existence, of the mayhem, the massacre, the death, the end of the First World War, and a desire to change the landscape of the world. And if we look at some of those populistic trends that we see today, the rise of xenophobia and division and hate in this world, then this Commission is very attuned to all those messages of history, the warning signs of history, that if we can get the social justice equation right, then this is also a roadmap to peace. We also have in our mind the heavy burden of previous commissions. The Brundtland report took 4 years to get the job done, and under the skillful leadership of Guy Ryder and the two presidents, we're aiming to get things done in just 1 year. Remember what she talked about, the common future, sustainable development, and she talked about a new era for growth, and I want to return to this theme. So therefore, the ambitions for this report are very significant. We hope, Guy, I represent workers in the media and entertainment world, we hope this is box office in Hollywood and in Bollywood. This has to resonate, this report. This has to capture political attention. It has to capture the attention of the business community, that they can see something that they can work with, they can apply it, we can develop, and that we can enter this new era. And that therefore we have to be ambitious in the rollout. Now, a new era for growth. We think that there's been a chronic underinvestment in people. If we look at the investment in people that is taking place, and when you look at some of the social balance sheet that we have of wage share, of vulnerable work, and 4 billion people without social protection. Can we use this report as a spark for a new era of economic growth, spurred by investment in people, investment in the human capacity? Therefore, there is tremendous potential here. And I look back to 1919, and the major investment that took place in the world in those post-war years in public investment into education, so that all children would have access to education. We have to have the same revolution in thinking when it comes to adult education as well as. As Diva said, we've talked about the new digital trends. Yes, artificial intelligence and the ethics of it will be addressed. The power of big data and the protection of data and the power of data and how it can be manipulated in the new psychographic world. These people know what they're doing. They know what emotions they're playing with, needs to be addressed. We've also, I have to say I suggested it, let's look at the labor relations records of the so-called FANGs, of these big five or the big six. and look at how is their behavior in terms of the UN guiding principles. They have such an influence on our life. They should be examples also in the labour relations field. We've taxed the office by saying, where do you think the jobs of tomorrow will be? In care, in infrastructure, in the green economy, and the promise of this revolution into new areas of work. We need to identify it. Our sense is that work will not collapse. Even if the OECD yesterday said 14% of jobs will be replaced by the technologies, potentially, and 1/3 of the workforce will also be directly impacted. But therefore, in this new world of work, we have to identify forms of work which are unacceptable, which we can't endorse or support as a model. The OECD is talking about quality jobs and a quality jobs index. We have to have the universality of rights. The platform workers, the gig workers, and these new economic actors have to be brought into the world of labour standards, and there's signs that they're beginning to understand this. In a process of change, the voice of workers has to be heard. Therefore, those core labour standards of the ILO, whether you're in Silicon Valley or whether you're in a garment factory in Bangladesh, those labour standards apply. And the collective bargaining is an important tool in this process. I don't have the time to go into the emphasis that we're going to put on women and women at work and women in life and all those gaps that we have to bridge, and also youth unemployment and the refugees and migrant workers. It's all in there, from the informal to the formal sector, and indeed the rural workers as well. And what kind of public services will we require to ensure that this revolution is in fact helping social justice? It's also, I think, in the future of work, we ask questions about, well, what kind of economy? What kind of capitalism can we expect? What is the role of business and its modes of governance? Is the profit maximization model or shareholder value model the most appropriate for this revolution that's in front of us? So there is a discussion also about governance, and also a recognition of entrepreneurial opportunity and spirit, and those talents to be unleashed and human potential to be unleashed, albeit with a respect for human rights and responsibility. So in conclusion, the contributions have been robust. It's been very thought-provoking. It has been a very free exchange. And now, as we say in the world of sport, we're now in the business end of the season with a meeting in November where we sign off on the final report. Brundtland, in her report, identified institutional gaps in the UN system. And in the reflection on, could we say the same thing here? And I think the answer is a very loud no. We have an International Labour Office which must be ready for this next century of its work. There is no gap in the UN system because the world of work is covered here, and the preciousness of the tripartite structure that we have. And therefore, this stepping up in terms of the work of the ILO and its contributions from norms, and also to bring about inclusive growth, is very significant. We think that the centre of gravity is changing, as Divat said, to the world of employment. We see this as really about the future of social justice, and also underlines the importance of the Philadelphia Declaration that labour is not a commodity. I hope that with this report we leave no one behind, and that as a Commission and as a global community we can make things happen. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Phil. I want to turn the remarks over to our three ex officio commissioners, and I'm going to start with Luc Kortebeck for the workers.
I thank you, and dear President, dear Director General. The two meetings we had with the Global Commission were high level, very open and very fruitful. And it is clear that the diversity, the richness in content, the experience, the diversity of the persons chosen for, and also the inspirational leadership of the co-presidents, Ramaphosa and Luffen, are success factors. The approach brings us a lot further than digitalization. The gig economy and the artificial intelligence. Every aspect of the world of work today has a place. Inequality, non-standard forms of work, demography, migration, the informal economy and rural economy, the financialization of companies, the role of the global supply chains, the public sector, the relationship with environment and climate, and the effects of these evolutions on decent work, social protection, and in general, social justice. Also in all times, peace and social stability are funded on the basis of social justice. And this is why no one was questioning but supporting in an affirmative way the two fundamentals of the ILO, being the Constitution and the Declaration of Philadelphia. Work was, is, and will be important, not only for having a decent life for people and their families, but also for giving people a meaningful life. If work is important, and it is, then we have to consider the realities and the opportunities in the formal and in the informal economies. And I have the impression that we do not have a lot of discussion about the analysis between the different commissioners. Now we are making the bridge, of course, to the recommendations for the conference of 2019. It is my understanding that the Commission makes the choice for protection and for regulation. Standards and the supervisory system will be important, and this is true too for social dialogue and collective bargaining. I couldn't detect anyone in the Commission coming up with clear other and better systems. But of course, we have to take into account that workspaces are blurring and temporal lines for work are blurring. Informal work can be formalized to the formal normative system with benchmarks of progress. How to formalize the new non-standard forms of work and the employment relationship. This cannot be an invitation to none or to less protection. Of course, the transitions will be challenging. Education, reskilling, and lifelong learning will be important. But only this will not be the one-size-fits-all solution. We are building the new agenda without throwing away the good experience and what works. Existing and new methods have to come together in what we call in the Commission a kind of new social contract. The governance role of this institution, the ILO, will be crucial, and personally I think that the world and the constituents need to give a stronger role to the ILO to go for the future of work we want. It is up to the Commission to show the way, but, dear colleagues, it will up to you all, the tripartite constituents of the next International Labour Conference, to make the decisions. Thank you.
Thank you, Luc. I'm now going to turn to Mr. Mthunzi Mdwaba, who is our employer spokesperson in the governing body and is also an ex officio member of the Commission.
Thank you very much, Deborah. Good afternoon, colleagues. It's very encouraging to see so many of you. Looking forward to working in the future. I think it bodes well for all of us. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is a huge pleasure for me to be involved in the work of the Global Commission of the Future of Work. We have to date had 3 meetings, namely in February, May, and now, when was it? I think I'm getting lost. There's 3. The last one was now in May. So October, February, and May. So those are the 3. And then we left with one in November at the end of this year. I've appreciated the fresh ideas of our fellow commissioners. The ideas have been robust, and the discussions have been very frank and very honest. It's really, really been different. It's been, listening to people who've brought ideas, I think, into our house, which will enrich us in terms of the decisions we will have to make ultimately. I think it will steer us in the right direction as we navigate our way into the future. Of course, there will be some difficulties in consolidating all the diverse and rich views into the report. There are also fears that the report might not reflect the full extent of the discussions, but I'm optimistic that the report will have some meaningful conclusions that can be used, given the proactiveness of the office, to get a very experienced journalist who's been with The Economist for a number of years. After all, the report will be a living document. It will act as a base for further discussion and deliberation, starting from its launch at the centenary anniversary of the ILO. We also had a lively discussion about the fourth industrial revolution realities. It is not in the future. Everybody feels it is here now. The developing world also has an opportunity to benefit from this revolution, unlike the previous ones in which same was not active. One of the examples I've used, which I will repeat with you, if you imagine yourself walking around Wakanda, the country in the Black Panther latest blockbuster movie. A wonderful world that it would be, a country working harmoniously with technology, people who are positive and bright with a great attitude and comfort towards change. As the saying goes, if we go do the same things all over and over again, why should we expect a different result? And these are the possibilities. We need to change the way we think and change our approach to global challenges. Sometimes an unorthodox way of seeing things is the best solution for all. It's difficult to go out of our comfort zones, but we all have to be brave and have the courage to do things we have not done before. Let's all try to find solutions from a different world, an unfamiliar world, than the one that has always had a monopoly of ideas, especially in situations where we are clear that sometimes, and maybe most of the time, we have not been successful in providing employment and serving the world that we are here to try and influence and change. If I could say one thing for everyone to take home today, which was part of the last meeting, and given the limited time, I will not be able to go and cover every detail, but it would be important for us to understand that we need to always stress the importance of skills and never underestimate the valuable human element of having the right skills. In a world where work can be replaced by artificial intelligence, robotics or technology, soft skills such as leadership skills, communication skills, critical thinking, and creative skills are now more valuable than ever before. Skilling, reskilling, and upskilling, as well as effective social security, are essential to manage the transition to the future world of work. The ILO, of course, has a very huge role to play in this context, with the Turin Center also playing a critical role given its captive audience of 187 member states who are tripartite clients. Dida mentioned earlier on social security, and I will not spend too much time on this again because of time, but it's clearly linked to the future of work. There are many ideas from different regions. The Latin American region also shared some ideas that I think we should also look at as a region in how they deal with this, to see how we could look at making sure that we don't leave anybody behind. I'm surprised, Philip, today you didn't talk about leaving anybody behind. Philip, this is Philip's line. We must never leave anybody behind. We must be inclusive. So I quote Philip on our podium. Attitudinal change and changing of established behavior is critical. We also believe that it is absolutely key to elevate the role of labor ministers, human resource departments in companies, and those working in the areas of finance, such as the other people who are working in areas of finance, trade, and others, because the labor people are not given the same kind of importance as they should be given, and it includes the ministries. We have the power to influence and shape the way society thinks on a variety of issues relating to the youth, relating to employment, entrepreneurship, women, and a number of areas that our rich discussion has taken us to. On this note, we look forward to completing the commission meetings so we can see the first draft of the report and bring it to yourselves for interrogation and discussion. I wish all of you a very enjoyable ILC. Thank you.
Thank you, Mthunzi. And as you can see, you've gotten a flavor of the discussions in the Commission. They are candid and not without humor from time to time. Let me now turn to Ambassador Claudio de la Puente, who is the Vice Chair for the governments in our governing body.
Muchas gracias, Deborah. In the benefit of the plurality, I will ask you to turn your earphones into Spanish for a while. Muchas gracias. Y quisiera empezar saludando muy cálidamente la presencia del señor presidente de la conferencia, que nos honra con su presencia, al igual que los ministros, dignatarios y representantes del tripartismo que participan en la conferencia. Muchas gracias a todos por estar presentes en esta ocasión. Quisiera agradecer también al director general y a la oficina por invitarnos a participar en este encuentro sobre un tema de importancia medular para nuestros países y para la organización, como es el futuro del trabajo. El informe en preparación adquiere aún mayor relevancia, encontrándonos a puertas de la conmemoración del primer centenario de la OIT. En mi condición de miembro ex oficio de la Comisión Global y de vicepresidente gubernamental del Consejo, deseo recordar que en esta iniciativa muchos países y gobiernos han tenido un importante rol inicial a partir de los diálogos nacionales que fueron impulsados por la oficina y que permitieron recoger valiosos insumos que han servido para orientar en buena medida la delicada tarea confiada a los miembros de la Comisión Global. El informe inicial preparado por la oficina, que siguió a los diálogos nacionales, permitió identificar los nuevos desafíos que acechan al mundo del trabajo y sugerir algunos caminos de salida, una suerte de diagnóstico inicial en donde se hicieron visibles las megatendencias que caracterizan al sistema internacional. Y entre ellas, si bien hay indicios alentadores sobre la evolución de la situación del trabajo, como la mayor participación de la mujer, la disminución del desempleo en algunos países, la creciente ratificación de convenios de la organización, existe consenso en la Comisión sobre la dimensión, la complejidad y la diversidad de los desafíos que plantea la nueva realidad del futuro del trabajo. Una constatación inicial apunta a la idea de la variedad de escenarios que se perfilan según los niveles de desarrollo y las características de los países y la marcada desigualdad en aumento en algunas regiones. Caemos además en la tentación de concebir el futuro del trabajo como algo distante que está por llegar, cuando la creciente automatización o la ampliación de las plataformas virtuales, el uso de la inteligencia artificial, parecen indicar que el futuro ya toca nuestras puertas. Es sin duda una época de cambios acelerados en lo que es previsible que ocurra un desplazamiento y reemplazo de fuerza laboral por nuevas tecnologías. Y en el corto plazo ello conlleva retos formidables para la readaptación, capacitación y educación continua de los trabajadores. Este es un fenómeno inédito por su velocidad, pero de alguna manera es una constante a través de la historia. Basta recordar las profundas consecuencias que sobrevinieron a la revolución industrial. Tenemos, sin embargo, una visión optimista sobre el tema y pienso que en el largo plazo, como ya ha sucedido, veremos este proceso como una oportunidad más que como un problema y tendremos la capacidad de poner la tecnología al servicio de las personas. Las variables demográficas, con matices muy diferenciados entre el mundo en desarrollo y los países desarrollados, incluido el fenómeno migratorio, resultan ineludibles en el informe, como lo serán también el empleo juvenil, el envejecimiento poblacional en países desarrollados o la población joven emergente en los países en desarrollo, que demanda oportunidades de trabajo dignas y pugnan por integrarse a mercados laborales cada vez más competitivos. Y ligado a esto, la necesidad de erradicar el trabajo forzoso y poner fin al trabajo infantil en todas sus formas. Asimismo, la dualidad del mundo rural frente a la realidad urbana y también los problemas vinculados al medio ambiente. Y, por supuesto, la realidad del sistema económico internacional. Esta variedad de factores parecen dibujar más que un futuro del trabajo, distintos escenarios, una suerte de universos paralelos o multiverso del trabajo. Detrás de todo ello, sin embargo, se encontrará siempre presente la necesidad de proteger los derechos laborales y generar las condiciones para que exista un trabajo digno y decente para todos. Estos altos objetivos constituyen la poderosa razón que explica la existencia y vigencia de nuestra centenaria organización y seguirá siendo un elemento central en el debate. Asimismo, al concebir el futuro del trabajo, no podemos dejar de lado el compromiso más ambicioso que ha asumido la humanidad plasmado en los Objetivos de Desarrollo Sostenible. El informe, sin desmedro de su necesaria independencia, deberá tener presente la Agenda 2030 y reforzar las variables vinculadas al ámbito del trabajo como una contribución para alcanzar un crecimiento económico sostenible e inclusivo. En ese sentido, el trabajo no debe ser entendido a futuro solo como una actividad rentada, un medio de vida, sino además un medio hacia la realización de las personas. En esta perspectiva, es importante que nuestra organización, tan singular en el sistema internacional, sea un vehículo útil para la construcción de los consensos indispensables en base al tripartismo que la caracteriza y que contribuya a la generación de políticas económicas sanas y transparentes, generadoras de riqueza y de justicia, un modelo que beneficie a todos en donde confluyan en una aproximación constructiva los intereses de los trabajadores, de los empleadores y de los gobiernos, en un esfuerzo dirigido al bien común y al bienestar de nuestras sociedades. Corresponderá a la Conferencia Internacional del Trabajo, en un año emblemático marcado por el centenario de la organización en el 2019, considerar el informe y adoptar las decisiones que juzgue más apropiadas. Confiamos que la Comisión Global, bajo el liderazgo de 2 distinguidos copresidentes y conformada por un grupo extraordinario de talentos de diferentes disciplinas, podrá consolidar un informe orientado a la acción, con una visión estratégica, aspiracional pero realista. Esperamos de fácil lectura, no solo por aquellos vinculados al mundo del trabajo, y que finalmente encuentre un balance adecuado entre nuestros anhelos más elevados y la realidad de un mundo en rápida evolución en el que nos ha tocado vivir. Muchas gracias por su atención.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Now we're going to turn it over to you, workers, employers, and governments, to ask questions and make comments. I'd really like to urge you to focus on the opportunity for questions while we have our global commissioners here at the podium. Although Phil Jennings had to leave, he has designated Luc Cordebec to fill in for him during this exchange. So we've agreed that we will start with an employer spokesperson and then turn to a worker spokesperson, and then we will have time for governments to make interventions. So let me first turn it over to Rajiv Dubey for the employers.
Yeah, this has come on. Great. So thank you very much for this fascinating and inspiring session. Gives us a glimpse into the out-of-box thinking and perhaps the working plan. And now we look forward as the employers group in the ILO to being fellow travelers and partners in creating the future of the ILO in its new avatar in unleashing human potential. What would be the new strategic focus, even as we are true to our guiding principles of decent work and social justice through social dialogue and tripartism? 4 areas clearly stand out for us. Number 1, the focus on the creation of meaningful employment and livelihood. We have the fond hope that technology and climate change will end up ultimately as being the creators and not the destroyers of jobs, especially if technology turns its focus to solving fundamental problems of mankind, problems of food, disease, education, water, and indeed governance. Number 2, clearly the role of skills and competencies and continuous learning. What can the ILO do to contribute to that? The third major one, social security, especially with the rise of the gig economy and the importance of the informal sector. And finally, indeed, the creation of legal and institutional frameworks for the governance of work. So thank you very much, and we look forward to working with you to create this brave new world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Dubey, for those remarks. Let me now turn to the workers, and I'm looking at Cataline Passier for her remarks. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you very much. We need a realistic picture of the world of work of today and the current challenges to decent work in order to understand how technical change will impact. The choices we make today to address or neglect these challenges will decide how the future will look like. So let me just share with you a few reflections, knowing that a lot of debate is already going on and will continue to take place. It is our view that when we do not take sufficient action, technological change will just further exacerbate the existing inequalities between men and women, the developed and the developing world, rich and poor, and big business and small medium enterprises. There's an element that's very important in the debate is that a lot of so-called old-fashioned realities persist in the world that require old-fashioned, as it were, responses. And when recently on mission in Southeast Asia, I was confronted with all these millions of workers, including the very young, working excessive hours of work in very unhealthy working environments. So when we discuss the new world of work and the future of work, let's realize that a lot of the standards of the ILO are very relevant for the world of today, even if they were made a long time ago. And let me refer to the discussion yesterday in the Committee on the Application of Standards, where there was a general survey on working time. For us, it's very important that we complement rather than replace the existing standards of the ILO and always check their relevance in various parts of the world and see where technological change needs us to address maybe additional challenges rather than to say that certain things are old-fashioned or not anymore relevant. It is also a moment that I realize that, for instance, this issue of will the change be guided by humans or by the technology, and Mr. Singh said we have to ensure that technology works for us and not the other way around. It reminded me of the remark made by the World Bank that we should lower minimum wages so that humans can compete with machines. I think it was very important that the ILO immediately took action and said that is not the program that we have, and the ILO must continue to take that as a starting point. We as human beings must be the masters of the future and how it develops from now on. Modern technology is also used, in our view, too often to do a vanishing trick of an employer-employee relationship, claiming that in the future everybody will be an autonomous self-employed worker. Here again, in a situation where we see that technology is allowing for stronger control over production and output than ever, and at the same time is severing the links between the physical employer and the worker, it is very important that we look through the veil and the mystification claimed by protagonists of deregulation based on technological change and ensure that responsibility is taken and regulated at the appropriate levels. And this will include, as has already been said, that new forms of work, platform businesses, will be included in the standards that we currently have on labor and social protection. Social protection floors are certainly a very important instrument to deal with the challenges of the near future. At the same time, we must make sure that people continue to be taxed, especially big companies and the rich, to contribute to how we are going to pay for all these challenges. The same can be said about climate change and the sustainability of our planet. And I remember an African professor recently saying, in the framework of the future of work, if Africa would in the future become the burial ground of dead robots, and those things we have to realize when we are discussing all the challenges. Let me finalize by saying that, of course, there is a strong gender dimension to the challenges. Our societies and workplaces have dramatically changed because of women entering our labor markets. We will be discussing the DG's report on women at work, But for us, it is of major importance to ensure that the women that currently are certainly not getting their fair share will also not be the ones feeling the cold winds that may accompany technological change, and it's high time to take action already now to prevent that in the future. This is a debate on the future of work we want, and we must be the drivers of that change, and the ILO is in a key place to show us the way forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pasquier. Let me open the floor to governments now for your questions and comments. Bulgaria? Yes, you have the floor, Bulgaria. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Greenfield. I am taking the floor both in my national capacity as Bulgaria and on behalf of the EU, as Bulgaria is currently holding the rotational presidency of the Council of the EU. We thank very much for organizing this meeting because we value very much the opportunity to interact in the Commission in the run-up to the preparation of its report and recommendations for the centenary conference. We value very much your work. Indeed, think that, as Commissioner Singh said, the whole process of deliberation on the issue of future of work a chance for the humanity. I will very briefly touch upon several issues that are of particular importance to the European Union and my country, because this issue is high on our agenda. We fully share with you the assessment for the global trends that actually transforming the world of work, and in our view, they should be addressed in a proper way in order to provide guidance to the ILO on how to pursue its mandate for social justice with its constituents in the future. From EU perspective, we need to adopt a life cycle approach to the future of work that encompasses all aspects of knowledge, skills and employment, working condition and social protection, because this is the right way to address the future challenges to the future of work. While the global processes could lead to some negative trends, for us it's also quite important that they could be perceived also as an engine for innovation, for economic growth, for creation of new quality jobs and increasing of labor productivity. What is also quite important is that all constituents understand these processes of change in order to tailor them to the demands of fairness at work and adequate social protection. We're already facing a lot of challenges in front of policies for human capital creation, formation, and this should be addressed in our view through an integrated policy framework that includes activities in support of economic, employment, working condition, education, and including early childhood development. With the rapid advancement of information technologies and increasingly globalized economy, education and training systems need to be modernized and to expand the opportunities for acquiring the new necessary skills and knowledge. And key moment in change management of future job requirements is this partnership between all stakeholders. The role of the social partners is growing, and I particularly would mention the role of employers, as their involvement in activities to identify future needs for knowledge and skills and contribute for improving the quality of education it's of significant importance. As Commissioner Jennings said, we need to capture the attention of business community. It is also necessary to build a holistic model of the labor market, including all emerging forms of work, but what is also quite important is to take into account the issue and the challenges stemming from the blurred boundary between the private and professional life, and the issue for need of preserving the balance between them. My question to you would be on issue that we find a bit challenging, and this is how to ensure that dynamic, innovative labor markets that are at the heart of the competitiveness are regulated in a way that can guarantee a minimum level of protection for all employers and higher productivity of labor in long term that could contribute to better living and working conditions. And finally, I would say that the European Union is currently working on Council conclusions on the life cycle approach to the future work that are supposed to be adopted in June, and that will be submitted to the Global Commission as EU input. And we hope very much that the contributions for the tripartite constituents will be reflected in the most appropriate way in the recommendations of the Global Commission, and that these recommendations will form really a sound basis for forward-looking and ambitious document, future-oriented and action-oriented, that will be adopted in the Centenary Conference. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now let me turn to the president of our conference, Mr. Murad. You have the floor.
Thank you for this most interesting of topics. I'd like to pick up on a few sentences. Geek economy, social security, social dialogue, and social justice. How much do we really know about the geek economy? The challenge for us is to bridge the gap between youth and wisdom. And a wise man recently told me, as we build the companies for the future, we need to build a boardroom that is half in suits and half in jeans. We need to create that mix between youth and between wisdom. Maybe as we go towards disruptive innovation, it's time for us to disrupt the conventional way we do business and to look at addressing a new social contract based on youth. That's just my intervention. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. Let me see if we have one or two more questions, and then I'm going to turn it back to the panel to respond to remarks that have already been made. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. Mac Urata from the International Transport Workers Federation. A question to Mr. Didier Singh, because perhaps you are the only one who mentioned about mobility movement of people, good supply chain, also about regulation of the artificial intelligence. And as we see, not just the supply chain transport, but in passenger transport with mobility as a service, MaaS, or the recent agreement between Uber and Transport for London to share big data. I'm just wondering if there is any coverage of future passenger transport policy in the future of work discussion.
Thank you very much. Germany, thank you.
No, but we can't translate you. Does anybody else have a microphone that works there?
Why don't we do this? Let's try it now. Okay, let's do this. While we figure out what's going on with your microphone, let's turn to maybe our commissioners to see, or are there other?
Yeah, just coming up.
Yeah.
Okay, vielen Dank. Kirsten Neuhorst, Deutschland, Deutsches Arbeitsministerium. Entschuldigung, meine Frage ist jetzt gar nicht so wichtig, aber ich wollte doch Herrn Kortebeck fragen. Sie hatten ja gesagt, dass den Konstituenten eine stärkere Rolle in der ILO gegeben werden soll. Und befinden sich denn in den Vorschlägen, die im Report dann sein werden, wird es da Vorschläge geben, wie das zu tun sein soll? Oder wenn ja, in welche Richtung das gehen soll? Vielen Dank.
Thank you. Okay, let me.
Austria.
Danke. Guten Tag, ja. Gleich weiter die deutsche Kabine beanspruchen. Ich habe nur eine kleine Frage, und zwar, mich interessiert, also wie detailliert der Bericht sein wird. Werden Sie auch die Chance haben, bei den Arbeitsbedingungen auch auf, zum Beispiel auch auf Gesundheit und Sicherheit und Arbeitsplatzbelastungen mit den neuen Arbeitsformen einzugehen, die psychosozialen, oder werden sich Ihre Empfehlungen eher allgemeiner halten? Und eine andere Frage, Sie haben im März gesagt, dass Sie vermutlich keine Empfehlungen für Rechtsnormen aussprechen werden. Hat sich das geändert oder wird diese Prämisse fortgesetzt?
Thank you. So we've had a number of comments and questions. We've heard an emphasis on being innovative, in fact, being disruptive. We've heard comments about a new social contract, the creation of meaningful employment and livelihoods, the need for a realistic picture of work. We've had specific questions about the balance between innovation and protecting workers, about social dialogue and social partners, and about the report itself. Why don't I just start with Didar Singh and ask you for your response to any or all of the questions, and then we'll work our way down.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Deborah. I'll just react very quickly to some of the questions that have been put up out here. The employer spokesperson talked about the real issues and how they should guide ILO in terms of employment, skilling, gig economy, governance of work. Yes, sir, we intend to do all of that, and we are looking at a very positive aspect. And as you said, will it address problems of mankind, of water, food, etc.? In a macro manner, yes. In a micro manner, no. We will be able to talk about some issues in terms of how we find technology addressing it, but how each part will address different parts of mankind and the economy, no, I don't think that's in the mandate of what the Commission is attempting to do. The workers' representative talked in terms of ensuring that the technological change doesn't exacerbate inequalities. Well, that is something that is really, again, beyond the mandate of the Commission. We can't say so, but we can only hope that it doesn't actually happen. There is no doubt about the fact that it will address the issues of mankind, so to speak, be continuing to be masters of the machines. That is the positive look in which we are examining the report and the whole issue. And we will be looking at issues like gender, which you also raised. Will it actually address standards? Well, that's a very difficult question, and I don't think that the report is going to get into too many micro issues. It is going to be more at the macro level. The representative from Bulgaria, and also talking on behalf of the EU, talked in terms of social justice and talks in terms of engine of innovation. Yes, engine of innovation is definitely something that we are looking at, and we believe that that is really the right way to go ahead. And in that context, you talked about education and training and stuff like that. Yes, we are addressing it as skills, because skills is really where we need to look at this future. Your question was, would the labor market regulations be addressed, and would a life cycle approach be taken to the second one? Yes. To the first one, no. In terms of the Excellency, the President of the conference talked in terms of youth and wisdom. We entirely agree with you. There has to be a mix of this, and there has to be a mix, a kind of a mix that ILO itself provides in the format that it functions at, a mix of different stakeholders and their views coming forward in addressing the future. In fact, the entire Global Commission on the Future Work is a mix, really, which is there. We also have youth, we also have gender, we also have workers' representatives and employers' representatives. So it is a mix that is being brought forward, and it will be addressed in the report. The International Transportation Union talked in terms of the importance of mobility. Yes, sir, but will it impact or address issues of transportation? The answer is no. We are not getting into micro issues and not specific sectors, neither specific regions for that matter. We are really looking at it as a global report which will look at global issues. There was a question. Phone's gone off, sorry. There was this question of the German Labour Ministry had talked in terms of the constituents. Will we be commenting about ILO and its constituents? I don't think I should comment on that. Mr. Quarterback will reply. There was also the last question on will we be looking at working conditions and standards. Again, the same thing that we said in March. We are not getting into the details. This is not an ILO addressing issues kind of report. It is a report which is futuristic in nature. It's looking at the future of work and what we need to look at in terms of various stakeholders and how they go on to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Didar. Let me pass the microphone to Luke Quarterback now.
Thank you, Deborah. I think that in general, the idea is that we have to embrace new technologies, that it gives a lot of opportunities. But the question is, who will make the choices? Huh? And if we want to go, and we want to go, of course, for better jobs, then the question is how can we, and which role can we play, the different constituents, but also the ILO as institution, which role can we play in it? And it's, of course, important about it. What's important is not only the employment relationship, but also the relationship between human beings and technology. So, but we are rather looking to it in a positive way. That's a first issue. Second, of course, for doing that, we need some regulation. Some of the old one will work, and we need some new. And what will be the relationship with working time, for example? Privacy. We are speaking a lot about privacy for consumers, but also privacy for workers will be a huge challenge. The global supply chains, cross-border negotiations, the new risks about health. And so, but I agree totally with my colleague that, in fact, we didn't go at this moment to the micro subjects, but we know the challenges, and we discussed about this. But a lot has to be done in the future for the Commission, but also for you as next International Labour Conference. I think about the role of the ILO. It is important for us as ILO to know what our place will be in the future. And of course, we have another discussion here, the ILO within the UN reform. At the moment we are discussing the centenary, we have also the UN reform. It's very important to find the good balance there. But also, we are looking to other organizations, world organizations, the OECD, the World Bank, for example, and others who are dealing also with these subjects and are not always telling the same things. And then the question is, okay, what will be the challenge and what will be the importance and the influence, in fact, of the ILO to the real world of work? I think these are the most important things I can answer at this moment.
Thank you, Luke. May I ask Mthunzi Mdwaba to reply?
I was hoping you wouldn't, because Luke covered some of the items I wanted to talk about. I mean, I'd made a note here that I want to talk about UN reform, and then you talked about it. And then I'd made another note to talk about certain items, but maybe let me start with the one that is raised by His Excellency on the jeans and suits. I like that, you know, I've never put it like that before, so I'm going to steal that from you, Your Excellency, if I may. I'm sure I'm going to have many speeches where I keep needing new inspiration, so jeans and suits it is. But I think the reality of it is, and this has come out a lot in the Global Commission, is that, and then I started looking at the room and I was very encouraged because, you know, at some stage I was worried about the average age in the Global Commission, and then it improved a little bit last time because some people came who were not there. But here it's looking absolutely promising, Guy. I think you'll agree that there's youth in the room, there's a good mix. So I think that's how we need to do it in our societies as well. When we get back home, we need to be alive to that reality that we cannot keep talking about the youth and solutions for the youth without having the youth with us, because otherwise it's like a theoretical kind of a situation. The same applies with women. There's been a big emphasis on women, and I think for me it's an issue of attitudinal change towards women. You know, I made an example that my daughter's 22, and I always check with her all the time. And the first meeting I went to when we're talking about women, I said, "Baby, what do you think?" She says, "Daddy, this payment parity, men and women is a big thing." But ultimately, I think it's an attitudinal issue, really, because we do have double standards for men and women. We do look at women in leadership very differently and make very silly remarks about women in leadership instead of looking at the real stuff that we must talking about rather than what kind of color-framed glasses you're wearing or you shouldn't be or whatever the situation. The other one that was raised is innovation. Innovation requires, of course, that we also accept the fact that we need to change. And change means you've got to change yourself because people use the word innovation very loosely, but without realizing that it's part of a very important educational journey. Because if you're going to talk about innovation, you also need to be very careful that you need to teach people that they can make mistakes as well. You know, when you talk innovative things, you can't always be successful. If the first time you do something, you do it wrong and then you get beaten for it, you're never going to be innovative again because, you know, it's not encouraged. So I think we need to talk about those kind of attitudinal elements of society, whether it relates to youth or relates to women, relates to innovation, relates to ministers of labor, which is a very big thing for me because ministers of labor, Your Excellency, are not taken as seriously in their own homes. But we say people are important. So people cannot be important if the people who are responsible for people are not given the elevated position they deserve. So those are issues that have come up, issues of disruption and whatever you. All of these we've dealt with. Of course, my colleagues, as they've spoken, the report also needs to be as short as possible. We cannot have a report that covers, you know, pages and pages and whatever. It's got to be, you know, there's an idea. I think I'm going to leave it to the DG. I'm not going to say how many pages just in case the DG is not sure we should be sharing this information just yet, or Deborah. But we talked about a number of pages, that we think it should be, to make it succinct, to give it to our members so that you can also look forward to reading it, because that's another thing. The form of the report was also talked about, how we ensure that the structure of it is of such a nature that it keeps you interested. It keeps the young people that we also wanted to read interested, to look forward to giving us input and whatever. You're not read page 1, page 2, and you think, these boring people again. So those are the things we've also paid attention to, and I'll stop at that, Deborah, and see if my other colleagues will cover the other points.
Thank you very much, Tunzi. Ambassador, may I turn it over to you now?
Muchas gracias, Deborah. Once again in Spanish, sorry. Yo quisiera referirme a la pregunta planteada por la delegación de Austria respecto al el informe. ¿Va a ser general? ¿Va a ser pormenorizado? ¿Qué características va a tener? Yo no quisiera romper una norma de confidencialidad e independencia en los trabajos de la Comisión, pero creo que es absolutamente razonable compartir algunos criterios generales que hemos barajado o que se han barajado en la Comisión. Y tengo que empezar por decir que han sido varias las opciones consideradas y ha habido muchas ideas respecto al formato del informe, ¿no? Y hay algunas ideas que han ido consolidándose y que creo que pueden ayudarnos a tener una idea aproximada de cómo va a ser este producto final, ¿no? En primer lugar, la idea no es... primero, empezaré diciendo que diagnósticos hay muchísimos, estamos sumamente informados respecto a la situación del trabajo en el momento actual, ¿no? La realidad actual en el mundo del trabajo, ¿no? Hay innumerables informes en Naciones Unidas, en la OIT y en muchas organizaciones respecto a las características actuales de la situación en el mundo del trabajo, de modo que partimos con una muy buena y abundante base de información. La idea más bien es, si he entendido bien el sentir de mis colegas de la Comisión, especialmente de los miembros que no son miembros de oficio, los esfuerzos apuntan más bien a un informe breve, concreto, orientado hacia la acción, con recomendaciones, ¿no? Y con una visión estratégica. Hay una palabra, y a riesgo de ser un tanto infidente, voy a revelarla, pero hay una palabra que ha estado en las mentes y en los debates de la Comisión, la palabra provocador. El informe tiene que ser challenging, tiene que romper esquemas de alguna manera. Y va de la mano esto con la idea que planteaba Su Excelencia, el Ministro de Trabajo de Jordania y Presidente de la Conferencia, en pensar en nuevas ideas, en nuevas maneras de poder afrontar una realidad absolutamente inédita, ¿no?, que es la que se nos viene a futuro y, como decía en mi presentación, está ya en nuestras puertas. De manera que hay que ser ambicioso, hay que ser audaz, pero repito, en opinión estrictamente personal, hay que ser muy realista también, de manera que el informe no vaya a convertirse solamente en un inventario de buenas intenciones. Al contrario, queremos que esté fuertemente enraizado en lo que es la realidad del mundo en el cual vivimos, ¿no?, pero aspirando a un mundo mejor. Esa es la idea. Gracias.
Thank you, Ambassador. Before I turn it over to the Director General to make some closing remarks, let me just say that one of the greatest privileges of working in the Secretariat to support the Commission is that the Commission itself is so diverse. And perhaps we should have started the session by saying that. Our members are diverse when it comes to the countries and the regions from which they come. Our Commission is diverse in terms of gender, roughly half and half. Our Commission is diverse in terms of the background that they bring to their work. They are activists, they are government officials, they are business people, they are academics, heads of NGOs and international organizations, and they bring to the Commission really an incredibly rich fabric from which to draw from. But they are all unified in their commitment to the work of the Commission and their understanding of the importance of the work they're doing. So just wanted to share that with you. And now let me turn it over to Director General Guy Ryder for our closing remarks.
Well, thank you very much, Deborah, and thanks to, firstly, everybody for being here. It's tremendously encouraging to see the interest that the work of the Global Commission generates amongst our membership, and thanks also to the commissioners. Well, I very much hope that the conversation we've been able to have today has given you some insight into the spirit and the intentions of the work of the Global Commission. Can I add to what Deborah has just said about the diversity of our Commission? I think we have had the greatest good luck at the ILO in having been able to assemble a Commission which is a truly working Commission. This is a group of 28 individuals of great talent and prominence in the areas that are being covered, who are genuinely committed to getting a report out that will be of the quality that we all want to see. I'm much struck by the comments about youth that have been made. I won't make any comments about this table, but I will make a comment that one of the commissioners is the UN Secretary General's Special Envoy on Youth. So we're getting that youth voice in, and part of her outreach efforts are to make sure that we don't miss that importance of reaching youth. And if I might say to the conference president that here it's not a case of bridging the gap between wisdom and youth. This is youth with wisdom as well, which makes a difference. Let me just bore you a moment with a couple of minutes on the process from now on in, because I think it's important for you all. You have heard that the Commission has now completed 3 of its 4 meetings. Its 4th and final meeting will be in November. It will be the most difficult one because that's when they're going to have to put the report together and hopefully put their names to that report. And we intend, and this is breaking news, to launch the report here in Geneva on the 22nd of January of next year. We've had indications both from President Ramaphosa and from Prime Minister Le Pen that this date is possible for them, and we want to make this launch a very highly visible. Whether it's Hollywood and Bollywood, I've no idea, but we want to make it a very highly visible occasion for the ILO, for the international community, for the world of work. And of course, we'll be putting together the best possible communication strategy that we can around the 22nd of January. In a very real sense, ladies and gentlemen, this is also the material kick-off of the centenary year of the ILO, 2019. So this fits in quite nicely. From the launch on the 22nd of January, and I'm going to write to you very soon in this regard, we are inviting, we're encouraging, urging, demanding that member states take this report and use it as the raw material, if you like, for national tripartite events in their own countries. We have to drive the ILO centenary down to the national level, and we believe that the report you will receive in January can be the centrepiece of national centenary events. I think it has to be combined with a slightly looking back over the shoulder historical perspective on your countries and the ILO over a century. But those national events will enable you to come to this very conference 1 year from now, when the Global Commission's report will be presented to the session. We're working out the precise mechanisms through which the report will be brought to this conference and the precise mechanisms through which it will be dealt with at this conference, but with the clear purpose of extracting from it all an outcome document. It could be a declaration, it could be something else. I'm not going to get into dangerous territory this afternoon, but we want a result from this process that will have concrete consequences. And that brings me back to the report itself, and you've heard from the commissioners a number of comments about what this report will look like. I have noted down a number of words which were used to describe the intended report that were agreed by the Commission previously, so let me read those words out. It is agreed, I think, in the Commission that this report needs to be concise, strategic, political, brackets, not technical, political. It needs to be accessible. It needs to be action-oriented. And its effect must be that it needs to have consequences. And I think the ambition of the commissioners is that this report be a direction changer. You can sort of think about what that means. And another word's been added today, that is that this report should be challenging. Now, colleagues, I really don't think it's for me to go over the substantive issues which have been dealt with very ably and in some depth by commissioners, but allow me perhaps a few general thoughts that the work of the Commission has inspired in me. The first is it has brought home, I think, with the greatest possible force, precisely what is at stake when we talk about the future of work. And here the rhetoric gets very high-flown very quickly. People talk about the future of humanity, they talk about the future of society, they talk about the future of just about anything you can think of being dependent upon or related to the future of work. I won't labour the point, but I think everybody understands that this is a matter of most primary importance. And that means, unsurprisingly, that the ILO is not the only place where the world of work is being discussed. We've heard from Bulgaria that the European Union has got its own discussions underway. The same can be said of the G20 under the Argentinian presidency, where the future of work is under discussion. The same is true in the OECD, which is holding major meetings in Paris right now. The same is true of the World Bank, whose World Development Report this year is devoted to the future of work. And I will add to that that the United Nations Secretary General has also designated the future of work of one of the, what he calls, frontier issues, which the UN is pursuing, and he wants a UN system strategy on the future of work to be produced next year. He actually wanted it done this year, but I managed to ask him to just wait a little bit while we got our act in order, and he agreed to that. But the point is, this is a crowded space. We're answering questions that are being asked in all countries. What reason do we have to believe that the ILO can do it any better than anybody else, and we won't simply be drowned out in the chorus of reports and views? Well, I think the answer lies in this room, in the people here. Firstly, it is because we bring together uniquely and importantly the global voices of governments, of employers and workers in a formula which has been unique for nearly 1 century and has proven its worth in a way which I think I don't need to convince all of you of. And that's one reason why I think our voice stands out. Secondly, because we approach the future of work from a very specific angle. And that is the angle of our Constitution, that is the angle of our objectives of social justice, fairness, stability and peace. And those seem to me to be values which are not soft issues, they're absolutely essential to the challenges of our time. Second point, we've been urged, and Didar Singh has said it again, to come at this with optimism. That is to say, at a time when people have been talking at some length about the demise of work, the end of work, or people have been talking about futures of work which look rather glum, look rather negative to many people. We're being asked to look at it and to project actually an ambition of the future of work that we want. And I think this is very much the approach that our Commission is taking. My own view is optimism should not be measured along a linear scale of how bad we think the world is today and how good we think it is. It's actually a matter of determining what we think the world of work should be like and measuring our own capacity and ability and desire to create that world. That's what optimism is about. It's not just an act of observing how good or bad things is. It is a determination to make them better. And that's the angle that we're coming at this from. Third point, universality. There is, and I don't know if the commissioners would agree with me on this, but I think there is a major issue that our commission has had to keep in its head throughout. That is that the debate on the future of work, for different reasons, tends to skew towards the cutting edge of high technologies, the experience of the most advanced economies, thinking that the future of work is the extrapolation of the experience of those countries, if you take my meaning, who have got nearest to the future already. We have to counter that natural skewing of the debate in that direction. The phrase I use is this report, this exercise, has to have meaning, has to be able to resonate not only in Silicon Valley, but in the Nile Valley, the Jordan Valley, Mr. President, as well. This has to be a universal approach. So what's the future of work in sub-Saharan Africa? What is the future of work in subsistence economies? What is the future of work in the informal world where most working people are still at work? We have to be big enough to make sure that we cover all of these questions. And my last word is about technologies. There is a real danger that this debate becomes reduced to a discussion about technology and technology only, and how many jobs technology will create and how many jobs it will destroy. We have to be somewhat more sophisticated than that. The debate is not only about technology. Of course, it is about technology. And here I follow Mr. Singh when he says, you know, we have to embrace technology as the potential source of abundance. And if it is that, and my first boss said we should embrace technology because it can liberate workers from the 4 Ds: dirt, danger, drudgery and deprivation. Technology should be that liberating experience. So why is it that so many working people look to the advent of new technologies with foreboding rather than a welcoming attitude? It is because we have some very important policy issues to address. That abundance is what we should be reaching for. That abundance has to be an abundance shared by all. That abundance has to be a future of work which fits in very closely with the ILO's objectives of social justice, and that's what we're reaching for. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to everyone for coming, and this concludes our session today.